I sit down, I light one up, and pour myself a drink. And I have found that it picks me up, it gives me time to think. It's been a long day, you know it's true, but I'm feeling right at home. And now I must say that time is due. Let's get on with the show, not just blowing smoke.
All right, everybody. Hello. It's time for Not Just Blowing Smoke. Coming at you live from Twin Smoke Shop Studio Headquarters in the 724 Lounge in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Be sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. If you're listening after the fact on Podbean, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, Google, or wherever else you may have found us, make sure you hit the subscribe button there so that you don't ever miss a thing. I'm Pastor Padron. I'm here with my co-hosts, Pat and Dave tonight.
Yo.
And tonight we're setting off a series that we're going to be adding to in future weeks. This isn't something we're going to do like week after week, but I think it's something we're going to return to on a regular basis, at least for a little bit, looking at some of history's most influential people who were also famous or infamous for smoking cigars or pipes, for being brothers or sisters of the leaf. And tonight we are remembering Sir Winston Churchill. And one of the reasons I picked Churchill for tonight is that tomorrow, November 30th, is actually his birthday. Tomorrow he would be 148 if he were still alive. But the Winston Churchill, this is the original Winston Churchill cigar from Davidoff, which features a Ecuadorian Habano wrapper and a Negro San Andreas binder, and fillers from Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic. It's a Toro. It's a 6x54. And what are we pairing with it tonight, Pat?
So we're doing Johnny Walker Black. Historically, Churchill actually drank Johnny Walker. Well, one of the things he drank, because he drank a lot, but I think he started off with wine in the morning or whatever. But he used to have Johnny Walker Red that he would dilute with water, and that's why everyone saw him drinking so often, is because that's how he hydrated, basically. But
there's nothing like hydrating with whiskey.
But back then, like, the way that they distilled Johnny Walker, like having like that malted scotch, like that was actually a really high-end scotch back then. Obviously now the technology we have today, like, it's considered kind of like a lower medium shelf, or
right.
But back then, that was a very high-quality scotch.
And this is the black.
Yep, just a core line black.
We don't have the red.
Yep,
here at
we're
the bar.
too cool for red, apparently.
We're too cool for red, dude. We've got the black. But, you know, the whole thing is inspired by Winston Churchill here. So we've all started the cigar here. What are your first thoughts on it? This has been one of my favorite cigars from Davidoff for years. So I'd like to know what you guys think.
So far, a lot of earth and a lot of spice or pepper, pizzazz.
Yeah, it has kind of a like a brown pepper spice to it on the retro, but it has kind of like a honey sweetness, kind of like a lime kind of citrus, some hay, a little bit of like creamy cedar, some clove, floral. There's always a lot going on with Davidoff. It's more of like those most subtle, nuanced kind of flavors, but you know, if you really like sit and think about it, there's a lot to offer. There's some kind of cocoa-iness in there too from the San Andreas binder.
San Andreas, yep.
So yeah, it has a lot going on for it.
Yeah, it you know, typically this is probably more on the milder end of a cigar that I would normally go to. But, kind of like the Byrons and Atabays, if you take their time and sit and think about what you're getting with the cigar, it really is very complex and balanced. I get a lot of wood. I get that cocoa sweetness. There is hints of that citrusy lime every once in a while. It's not constant, but there is a nice floral quality to the room note of the cigar, and the burn on it is awesome. I love this cigar.
You can never fault Davidoff on their construction.
No, it's an excellent cigar that way. So before we get into some things Winston Churchill wise, I thought we'd talk a little bit about what's going on here at Twins. Black Friday is behind us. Thank God.
Yep.
It was very good, but it was very busy, which I suppose I should be happy about. But we have a couple of events coming up in the next few weeks here in December. And the first is if you go just in order of dates, the Savinelli Christmas event, December 10th, which is a Saturday from 12 to 4 p.m. Kaz Walters from La DC Distribution Group, who is the head of national sales for La DC, who has the exclusive importing rights for Savinelli in the United States. He's going to be here, and we're doing this great kind of almost Narnia theme. We've fabricated these doors that you're going to walk through, and you walk through the doors, and everything's going to be set up behind them.
You're
And
gonna have like pines to push through and coats and jackets.
well, I thought about how much like a wardrobe could I get, and the more it just became very complicated until Bobby, one of our tobacconists, showed me these, full-length curtains that actually look like doors. And so you can just push the curtain, so you don't have to worry about if, God forbid, there's a fire alarm or something, or people need to leave. There's not this big, huge wooden thing and trees and
Genius.
sitting in the way.
Awesome.
So we're going to do that. And there's going to be, so to go through the wardrobe, unlike Narnia, it'll actually cost you some money. It's $30, but what's going to be behind there is an event going on during the Savinelli show, and there's going to be what you'll get for that $30 is you'll get to take part in a blending competition, blending your own holiday blend of tobaccos. We're going to provide all of those for you. There's going to be different confectionaries there, including Turkish Delight, that's being provided for us. And there's going to be, winters, you like the hot drinks, the hot coffee,
Gotta have the hot chocolate. to
hot
go with
chocolate,
the Turkish delight.
and there's going to be tea as well. But we're going to have Redbreast Irish whiskey there too, so that you can spike your drinks. And then you're also, if you go back there, you're going to get a special Savinelli token that you will be able to, if you decide to buy a pipe at the show, you can present that token and get $30 off the pipe that you want to buy.
Sweet.
So
Pretty dope.
the event ends up being free to you, which is awesome. So that's happening on the 10th. That's open to anybody. I think the big thing that's going on really, though, is the Toast Across America dinner that we're having on December 15th at 6 p.m. at the Oscar Barnes Greenhouse in Hooksett, New Hampshire.
Yay, Hooksett.
And you've been moving on that with ticket sales and everything like that. There's there's 50 tickets,
Yep.
right? And how many have we sold now, Pat?
It's got to be around 30, if not more, at this point.
Yeah, we're really, the tickets are moving along. So the event is $200. This all goes to support the Cigar Families Charitable Foundation. which was founded by the Fuentes and Newmans, and benefits the poorer communities in the Dominican Republic where they are based. And it's going to be a 4-course prime rib dinner.
Well,
You're
that
going to
won't
get
suck.
the this year's Toast Across America pack, which it's sharks this year again, right?
Yeah, it's sharks. It's the usual Opus and then the Julius Caesar.
Yeah, Julius Caesar and Opus Sharks, and that's if you were to buy that pack, that's $50 at least, depending on where you go. And then there's going to be opportunity there to purchase Rare Fuentes and Opus X2, and proceeds from that will be also going to the charity. So it's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great meal. It's going to be awesome. There's not that many tickets left, like we were saying. So make sure you call or go to Twins, whether it's Hooksett or Londonderry, and get your ticket before it's gone. It's going to be a fantastic event. All right. So you want to talk a little bit about getting into the nitty gritty of the Davidoff here, the Davidoff and how they do this, and the Winston Churchill?
Yeah, so I mean, you could probably spend like a series of episodes on Davidoff's history, so I won't touch too deep on them.
Yep.
But you know, I guess kind of the more relevant things would be just like the brief, like in 1906, Zeno Davidoff started selling cigars. They would blend their own blends. You know, they would use like Cuban tobacco, and they would just kind of like have their own shop and like kind of retail, and they would just do like kind of like house blend type things. And then the Davidoff that we know it today, more of the manufacturing, they got their license to manufacture right after World War II ended.
Really?
And there's like controversy, I wouldn't say controversies, but they used to say that Zeno Davidoff like blew up during World War II because it was one of the only, I think it was the only company that had access to selling both to the Axis and the Allied powers.
Okay.
I used to have a source for that. I forget it, so don't take that like for granted, you know. So,
All right.
but I think it was cigar fishing. I forget. Someone posted a story about it, but yeah. But more of the relevant thing of like this cigar. I mean, obviously, when you look at Davidoff, the price is really what kind of gets people. You know, at least from my experience having them try them. But the big thing about Davidoff is there's a lot that goes into the blending and the product. And one of the things that I admire about it and why I'm a Davidoff guy is like the transparency in the product. So if you want to know exactly what it is you're smoking, they tell you the primings and the actual, like, they tell you everything about it. You know, it's not like, oh, undisclosed, or they don't just say like, oh, Nicaraguan or whatever, you know, like, so like this cigar specifically, it has an Ecuadorian Rojiza wrapper on it.
Now, what's Rahiza? Is that a
So I think
region, or is it a type of?
So it's a seed.
It's a seed.
I think it's one of, I believe it's one of the Cuban seeds that isn't used often. But again, it's Davidoff. So they have like their own seeds that they use. They have different hybrid crops that they use. So I'm not too sure. We know it's grown in Ecuador. That's about it. But
Thank you.
and then it has that San Andreas binder, and then it has 5 filler leaves. It's all Seco primings, and they have a Pulido Minato, and then they have a Olor Dominicana. Oh no, just a regular Pulido, and then Davidoff has their own hybrid seed, which they did a hybridization with Olor Dominicana and the Dominican Pulido. So there's 1 Seco leaf in there, and then they have 2 Seco leaves from Nicaragua, being Condega and Esteli. So, you know, just out of that, like, you have a bunch of regions represented in this cigar, which this Winston Churchill actually is a second rendition of the line. The first one was almost primarily a Nicaraguan, to my knowledge. So they wanted to change the brand, and they wanted to kind of have it be... They wanted to, like, put another fume in the brand. That's why they reblended it the way that they did. And... I think when they released the first Winston Churchill, I don't think they were done with the hybrid crop they were doing. I think that was done like...
It was a while ago, the original run.
Yeah, I think like early, if not the 2000s. Yeah, I think that's around when that hybrid crop was actually made. And they have a really, really good YouTube video on like a documentary on how they go about their hybridization, like the whole seed to cigar aspect of their products. But I mean, yeah, like that's really like Davidoff. Like there's like every cigar they have, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I know we at Twins we have the Davidoff Royal, which is like $120 to $80 depending on what the Vitola is going to be, and you know
I
that's
totally thought those cigars were going to be sitting in the humidor for months, if not years. And we sold through. Now it's only a 10 count box, granted, but when they're $80 a pop or 120 a pop for the Solomon, you know, that's a lot of money to drop on a cigar. And they were gone within a. They weren't there 2 weeks.
yeah, and again that's another one of those really. Well, I mean, I've had the Robusto,
Right.
and
What did you think?
to me, it's worth it. So the thing about that cigar and why it's the price that it is, and a lot of the people like don't really look into the blend of it. That's why it's really you have to be a Davidoff guy. That when I tell people when I'm selling it to them, they appreciate the cigar. But it has a Habano wrapper, like doing Habano. It has a I don't think it's San Andreas binder. I forget the binder. But the fillers is what you're paying for.
Okay.
So it has 5 filler leaves, and it's all Lajero. It ranges from 14 to 7-year aged, and it has San Vicente.
San Vicente.
So it has 2 San Vicentes. One's 14 years, the other one's 7 years aged. They have an Olor Dominicana Lajero, aged 7 years. They have their hybrid, 2 leaves of their hybrid, which is Olor Dominicana, then the Dominican Pleto. So one 7 years, one 14 years.
And
so
those are unique to them.
yes.
They're hybrids.
And they say the tobacco is aged in royal barrels, so I mean the tobacco's been sitting somewhere in a warehouse for 7 to 14 years.
Right.
You know, and,
That's what you're paying for. You're
and
paying
yeah,
for
and
all
like,
that time.
yeah, and at the end of the day, like you don't just harvest tobacco and then just cure it and age it for 14 years. You have to make sure you're systematically checking on the tobacco to actually make sure it's maturing properly and being kept in the right conditions. So that whole process is really what you're paying for, on top
Right.
of the hybridization, which being around like that Olor Dominicana being out from maybe like the hybrid crop being like maybe a little under over 20 years, like the tobacco from there is pretty close to when they first started having that crop. I mean, maybe like 10 years difference, but so it's just interesting that you're smoking something that has been harvested and aging for 14 years. Like
Yeah. That's crazy.
like I was 8 years old, so
Jeez.
Rob wants to know: do we find that mild-bodied cigars are more affected by what we're pairing it with than fuller-bodied cigars? He says he does.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
This is, with the Johnny Walker Black, that's a pretty potent whiskey. And this is would you say this is kind of a medium, maybe medium minus for a cigar? That's kind of where I'm getting. It's definitely not a medium.
I would
plus.
just say it's a medium minus. Yeah,
Somewhere around. It's like on that
it's
lower end.
more
of
than a
medium.
mild. Put it that way.
I give it like body wise, I usually put Davidoff like medium and a quarter, and then strength wise, you can put it to that, medium minus. Like the body, like the finish on a Davidoff for the most part, especially like it's more prevalent in like the Winston Churchill lines, both this and the late hour, more so in the late hour, obviously, and then the Nicaragua series, like. There's a lot of nuances too, and it has like a nice like medium and a quarter finish. Like it's not like most of your mild cigars. Like to me it doesn't fit that category.
So to me, the whiskey kicks up the spice of the cigar, increases the woody notes. The cedar notes in the cigar really seem to pop. Those more floral, citrusy, gentle kind of things, are knocked down, but it's still it's a very pleasant pairing.
Yeah,
Would you?
I'm getting a really good lingering taste of caramel with the cigar and the drink together.
Yeah, I get a lot of that caramel on the finish just by smoking the cigar, and that's one of the reasons I like it so much. You know, and the further you get down the cigar, the more intense that becomes.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
To me, it's like with the pairing, like it's kind of like contrasting and like the taste and aroma. So the taste of the cigar, like on my palate, it's bringing forward those Dominican fillers with the 3 Dominican filler leaves, and it's giving me that kind of like floral, kind of vanilla honey sweetness in my palate, with a little bit of like maybe a very subtle espresso kind of bitterness on the sides, and then through my nasal passage, being in the aroma of the cigar, it's bringing out those Nicaraguan characteristics. So it gives me
Yeah.
like more of that kind of zesty spice, that kind of like
Yeah.
cedar woody note comes forward. And then it has like kind of a lingering, it has a lingering spice, which I wasn't
Yeah.
getting through the nasal before. So
Right.
to me, it's pretty interesting just because like it's kind of bringing different aspects of the cigar through like, you know, like the taste and the aroma.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And I just smoked the glass a little bit, and it was that caramel, that sweet kind of caramel finish that you get on a cigar, really showed up in the drink. And so it's adding a lot of its own sweetness, a lot of that caramel to the whiskey, and it goes very well with it. It goes very well. Now, if you look up, I don't know how many of you listening to the podcast or watching the podcast or history buffs or anything, but if you look up any kind of top 10 list for who were the most important, most famous, most influential, whatever word you want to use, people of the 20th century, Winston Churchill will always be in that top 10. He may be higher up or lower down, but he is solidly in just about any top 10 list that you find. And if you look up lists of who are the most important or influential people in world history, those lists are usually longer, 40, 50 people. He's on that list too. So when you're talking Winston Churchill, you're talking one of the big guys, certainly one of the biggest of the 20th century, and very important character. He was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during World War II. He helped bring about the defeat of Hitler and the Third Reich, and did that while conducting almost everything for the Brits from underground bunkers that he was living in to hide from the bombings. And he actually had the cities do mandatory blackouts when the raids were coming, so that it was harder for the Germans to actually hit targets, and more specifically civilian targets. He was also one of the guys who engineered D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, which really kind of was the beginning of the end of the war. And he was born on November 30th, tomorrow, in 1874. And he was born in the
1874.
1874.
What else happened that year?
I believe
I recognize that.
Yeah,
year.
it's a very important year for us at Twins.
No, it's the birth of 724 cigars.
That's right. That's when the factory was founded, 1874. We have a whole line of cigars named after that year.
Yep.
Yep. The Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire was where he was born. That's where his family lived. He was the son of Lord Randolph Churchill and his wife, Jeannie, who was the daughter of Leonard Jerome, who was a wealthy American businessman. So he's got British royalty on one side, American business money on the other.
Terrible.
So he was born with that whole silver spoon thing. And, as he grew up after 1895, he graduated from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. And he and another officer of his traveled to Cuba, where he was for a few months. And that's where he got the bug for cigars. He was only there for a few months, but he totally got into it. And he had, back then, there weren't all these Nicaraguan and Dominican and Honduran cigars. Cuba was really the monopoly on that. That's where he went to go. And his favorite brands became Romeo and Julieta and La Roma de Cuba, which is not the La Roma de Cuba
I
that you
know.
know and love today.
I know, but still.
And through his contacts and connections, people would always be sending him these cigars wherever he was in the world. So he was actually stockpiled with this stuff even throughout the war when, you weren't able to get a whole lot of stuff because kind of like what we've been experiencing today, distribution was really halted with just about everything with the war. So in his home, he had built a storage room adjacent to his study, and that room was designed to hold cigars. They were all labeled, they were all organized, and he could have anywhere between 3,000 or 4,000 cigars in his little humidor room.
Jeez.
And yeah,
Must have been a sight to see.
yeah. It'd be like walking into Twins. Actually, Twins is much bigger, but that's for a personal collection at any one time
Not
to
too
have
shabby.
3,000 to 4,000 cigars, and I'm sure he had others that weren't in his home. He probably had them in his office too. He was famous, of course, for smoking cigars. We have a size of cigar that was named after him.
Yeah.
Churchill was named
Which begs
after
the reason
Winston
why
Churchill.
we're not smoking a Winston Churchill. We're smoking a Winston Churchill Toro.
On a previous podcast in Another Life, we did that. On the birthday, we smoked the Winston Churchill, and but the podcast doesn't go for 2.5, 3 hours. So I figured we'll go with the Toro.
Oh, we're still alive after the podcast, though.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Just say.
But it's hard to give real thoughts on a cigar when you can't even get halfway through it by the time the thing's over.
Fair enough.
At least with this, we can kibitz and talk and
Kibitz. Word of the week. Kibitz.
Yeah, kibitz. So, how many cigars did Winston Churchill smoke a day?
I'm gonna guess around 5 to 7.
9
Okay.
to 13.
9 to 13. Well, you both are close, but no cigar. It was between 8 and 10. 8 and 10 cigars a day on average that he smoked. And he didn't just smoke the cigars, though. He like chewed them. He was always chewing on the cigar. He liked the flavor of just chewing it. And so he would often let the cigar go out and he would just kind of chaw on it. But, so his cigar, the back of his cigar could get really nasty. You've seen that. When people just get all chawy on their cigar and you find this wet gooped thing in the ashtray.
Except for Pat's. Pat's looks like it was never even cut. It's just expertly lipped.
So he actually created something he called the belly roll paper. And it was this brown paper that he wrapped the back of the cigar with so that it didn't just get all goopy and fall apart on him. But that way he could chew it, chaw on it, suck on it, whatever he needed to do. But even doing that, so basically,
Do they still make it?
no,
I wonder.
no, it was his thing. He did it himself. But you think about it, here's, what does it take you? An hour and a half maybe to smoke a good cigar?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say 8 cigars. So there's 12 hours of having a cigar in your mouth during the day, at least. And he got a lot of flack for all the smoking he did. He also, as Pat's kind of hinted at, did a lot of drinking as well. And in spite of all of those bad habits, and you'd think that somebody who smoked 8 to 10 cigars a day and drank as much as he did, he would have, ruined his liver and gone to hell in a handbasket at age 30. He died in 1965 when he was 90 years old. He lived a right old age. And he credited cigars specifically with helping him to stay calm and to relax and to focus. And that was one of the big things he said, was able to keep his head level to deal with all the stressful things he had to deal with the war, with depression, with, having the ever-living crap bombed out of his country. It was cigars that kept him going in large part. And, that's
Amen to
certainly
that.
one of the reasons I smoke cigars, is to relax, and because it relaxes me. It's not only something I like to do to relax, it's something that helps me to relax when I need to be relaxed. And when you are like me and you live in the estrogen palace,
You need to relax.
you need to have help relaxing, and cigars, pipes,
Fireplace
that-
helps too.
that helps me do that. And so I totally get that from his experience there. Do we want to talk any more about what we're experiencing with the cigar, or do we want to kind of keep going with the Winston Churchill stuff?
Oh, I'm still getting that yummy caramelness. Not much has changed for me other than that, though.
What do you think of the pairing?
I think the pairing's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think it works really well to me. I mean,
It works.
It's like, it's typically when you think Scotch naturally is what people would mostly stereotype to be a good cigar pairing, right? Like I think Scotch is probably like the number one thing most people would probably say pairs with a cigar. To me, bourbon follows, but I think Scotch is like just because it has a little bit of a smokiness to it.
Yeah.
There's some sweetness to it, so typically Scotch. But so with this one, when we first chose it, I was thinking, oh, it'd be kind of cool because Winston Churchill drank Johnny Walker, and
Yeah, you're trying to get into the whole thing.
yeah, but we chose it because that's what Churchill did,
Right,
not because
right.
I mean this cigar obviously came after Churchill.
Right.
It's just named after him,
Right.
so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good pairing.
Probably so did the black.
Yeah. It's maybe, maybe, but I'm not sure when the black came out. But
I have no idea.
I know the red came first, but yeah. So it naturally you don't know if it's going to be a great pairing, but it ended up being really good. And to me, I mean, it's probably one of the better pairings I think we've had in a while, for me at least, just because it gives me like a nice sweetness in the palate. It has that kind of smokiness, and to me, it more so like preps your palate to be able to taste the cigar more than without it. Because again, like I usually smoke the cigar a little bit before I have the drink, and like the second I started introducing the drink to it, that might be why I'm saying it's more of a medium and a quarter when it comes to the body, because it really opened the cigar up for me, and like I can really distinguish with like the taste and the aroma, the different tobaccos in the cigar. Like I said, like the taste of the cigar, I'm getting those Dominican fillers out of it, but then on the aroma, I'm getting those Nicaraguan, and then it's very interesting to me. So, and it's not taking away at all from the pairing. I think it's more complementing the flavors and making it more
No,
pronounced.
it's not taking away from the cigar either, which
Yeah.
I think is just as important.
So Johnny Walker Black was born in 1909.
Okay, so
Oh, sure, okay, yeah, I was out.
it could have been. Churchill was very big into the finer things in life.
And by 1920, it was available in 120 countries.
Wow. There you go. Now, back then, and I think the big thing over in Europe at that time was, what kind of whiskey did you like? Did you like the Scotch, or did you like the Irish whiskeys and stuff? And Churchill obviously went all over the place, but the Johnny Walker was one of his go-tos. Where do you guys fit in that whole thing? Scotch, whiskey.
I'm definitely more of a
Talia's
whiskey
more of
person.
a whiskey person.
I'm more of a whiskey person.
Yeah.
Yeah, more whiskey.
I'm gonna give a really attorney-like answer and say it depends. I think if
Like
it's
the
like,
diaper?
to me, if it's like upper shelf things, like I think Scotch is definitely what I prefer more. But I think on the market today, a lot of your affordable like medium shelf bourbons seem to surpass medium shelf Scotches. But I think when you get to the top shelf range, to me, like the ARG bag, like not the like the pirate version of it. It's like a here. I mean, we have it here. It's like I think it's like a $40 shot, but it's like, geez, it's awesome. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
really, really good because it has like that smoky music to it, but it's not overpowering. It's really aged. It's subdued. It has a lot of like those nice sweet notes, those kind of like mossy kind of. I don't know. It's really good to
Mossy.
me at least.
Mossy.
But again, like I don't like really sweet finished spirits, so I think a lot of the time Scotches have more of those kind of drier, like earthy kind of
Bourbon
woody
tends
notes
to be
to
on
it.
the sweeter side
Yeah.
of things. Yeah.
That being said, Caribbean Cask is one of my favorite spirits. I love that. Love it.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. I like that. Another one of Talia's. Of course you like it because you like Talia. Yeah, sip it before you talk. That's very good. I have some favorite Winston Churchill quotes. You can't talk about Winston Churchill without bringing up some of the things he said. He was a great orator. He was a great writer. In addition to being a statesman and a military guy, and he has some of the best quotes out there, and some
Oh,
of the
we'll
best,
see. Let's see later on.
best quips. Let's so, here's a couple of quotes, kind of focusing on success that he said that I really like. He said, "Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm."
There you go. Yep.
That was his definition of success. Isn't there a lot of truth to that?
There is a lot of
people
truth.
people think that to be a success means that everything's going to go right and everything's going to be peachy keen and you end up in the mansion. I watched this video today of Jeremiah Merrifield, and even in the interview, he's still in the same $4 million blue suit with the hat and the
Stefan
sunglasses.
Ricci.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, did he put everything he had into that one set of clothes? Every single picture that I've seen him in, he's wearing the same stinking thing. The only thing that changes is the tie, but he looks really good in it. I give him that. It's not like I have a million suits at home either. I pick one that looks good and you go with it. But you almost think that that's what it is. But he's a great example. His family lost their fortune again and again and again, and they had to keep rebuilding it from scratch. And I think a great story of that too is like the dog walker, Kurt Kendall's dog walker.
Yep. That was a mistake.
It was he wanted to do a Corona sized cigar with a shaggy foot, and Kurt didn't communicate the Spanish correctly, and so what they got was an unfinished foot instead of a shaggy foot.
No.
And he was just like, what do I do with all these cigars? They're not at all what I want. And he ended up lobbing off the unfinished part of the thing, and the dog walker was born. And now there's 4 different dog walkers available. It's one of the most popular cigars he makes. It's from you failing is part of success.
And one of those questions that has to deal with that I get a lot is if there's ever going to be a 5-pack of WK.
That's a really good question. That's a good question. I have no idea. People have asked about that. That's for sure. Let me see here.
I think one of the cool Winston Churchill stories or just facts about him is, like they call him the commander and the negotiator. So like there's stories of him, like, because obviously, one of the big things in his purview was negotiation.
Yep.
And it just, the way that he held himself in negotiation, like he was very calm, relaxed, but stern. And he was obviously known to have a cigar, and there's myths of he used to put like a little nail inside of the cigar and he would smoke it. So as he's negotiating and talking, people would be focused on the big ash holding on his cigar than what he was actually saying. So, because the ash wouldn't fall. It almost
Right.
had the entire thing on. So, and that's why, like, the Churchill, it came from because he used to smoke really long cigars to kind of accumulate that ash. So it's kind of cool. And then again, like, one of the unique things that Davidoff does is every year they have, I don't know how many years they've done it. I think 3 or 4 years, I think they've done the limited edition Winston Churchill.
Yep.
So I bought the 2022 box, and it actually came in a suitcase looking box, and it has like the negotiator on the inside. It gives you kind of the story about him as a negotiation. So it's just one of those cool kind of historic things, like with how Davidoff has really incorporated Winston Churchill in, which I think that they're going to probably release their 2023 soon, because I think around like his birthday is when they usually let the next
usually
year's
when they
run
do it,
now.
yeah.
So that should be coming out soon.
So here's an interesting Churchill fact.
Yep.
Churchill almost didn't make it into the military school. So as a student, Churchill performed poorly in virtually every subject except history and English comp. He was particularly inept at foreign languages. In a memoir, he described taking a 2-hour-long Latin test that he left completely blank, apart from his name and the number of the first question, along with a blot and several smudges. His plan to attend the Royal Military College at Sandhurst suffered a setback when he twice failed the entrance examinations. With the help of a military tutor, he finally qualified the third time around, but only for the cavalry class, which had lower standards than the infantry.
That's right. That's right. That's where it was. And that leads right to the second quote I have here. He says, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." That's important, because success does not just mean everything is going to continue to go right. Failure doesn't mean everything is going to continue to go wrong. But in either case, you can't stop. You have to keep going. And that's great advice. That's great counsel for just about anything that you're doing.
Agreed.
Another great quote here, favorite of mine of Winston Churchill: "You have enemies? Good. It means you stood up for something sometime in your life." Well, you were both wowed by that one. Yeah, you young whippersnappers, you need to hear this stuff. This is important for making it, especially you being a lawyer. You need to write that down and remember it.
I have all these legal quotes in my head right now, so I'll stick to those.
Like what? Yeah.
What do you
Okay.
mean- what do you mean,
Bubblegum?
aw? I don't know if some of these quotes are appropriate for the podcast. They're very controversial.
Very controversial quotes. Yeah. Okay. You can say that if you want. All right. Here's another one, going back to the whole diplomatic aspect of Churchill. He said, "Tact is the ability to tell someone to go to hell in such a way as they look forward to the ride."
You think when someone knows they're famous, you think they just sit down and just, in his case, have a scotch and just be like, "I'm just gonna say random quotes right now and just have them be engraved in history"?
I don't know. He was pretty gruff and rough with some people, and a lot of that had to deal with the fact that he was drinking. He didn't like being told what to do. He didn't like it when people were looking down on him for whatever it was. Speaking about cigars and drinking, he said, "My rule of life prescribed as an absolutely sacred right, smoking cigars and also the drinking of alcohol, before, after, and if need be, during all meals and the intervals in between them." Isn't that great? And then he says, another quote he had regarding cigars was, "I drink a great deal, I sleep a little, and I smoke cigar after cigar. That's why I'm in 200% form."
That's awesome.
That's very good. Very, very good. Um, there are a couple of interchanges Winston had with some ladies that have been favorites of mine for decades. From reading his biographies and autobiography. Well, not autobiography. Biographies of Winston Churchill. This is pretty well known, but if you haven't heard it, you're never going to forget it. He's sitting with this girl, Betsy. I never got her. I didn't write down her last name, so we'll just keep it straight. Her name was Betsy. And, Betsy Braddock. There it is. I did write it down. He was with her, and she says to him, Winston, you are drunk. And what's more, you are disgustingly drunk. To which he replied, Bessie, my dear, you are ugly. And what's more, you are disgustingly ugly. But tomorrow I shall be sober, and you will still be disgustingly ugly. Wow. So this is what I'm saying. That's pretty stinking bold.
This is good to say after that. So here's another one. Churchill was voted out of office before World War II's end. There's another little fact.
Yep. You either loved him or hated him when he was in office.
Like one of the interesting things that I always think about is and it kind of is relevant to just Winston Churchill because he had negotiated a lot. Is that I'm kind of like just like especially like being in a cigar lounge, we always kind of talk about how it's like the equalizer, like you can have like like a systematic racist or Gandhi basically sit together in a room and it's
Right.
like you wouldn't even know who's who, so I'm just kind of like imagine if you like how I'll take without getting too like Russia and Ukraine.
Okay.
Imagine just sitting in the room with everyone with a cigar and just talking. I just feel like I just wonder how like that kind of general approach would affect them. I'm not saying it would cause world peace or anything like that. It's just
Right.
like people tend to have more of a structured conversation, like more productive dialogue
With only
when
one
you're
cutter and lighter.
No, you're totally right. I mean, what's more divisive than religion and politics, right? And, going through seminary, that's all religion, and politics gets a lot tied into that whole subject of things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you, debates, people would be all over each other, but it was more trying to prove how right they were and how wrong you were, or how much they knew or how much you didn't know. And I would have, at the same time, while I was in seminary, I was working at a cigar shop part-time, and the best talks, debates, or whatever about theology, faith, the existence of God, or whatever that I had were always at the cigar shop because they were civil, and it wasn't like everybody was agreeing with each other. Frankly, you had a much wider degree of difference in points of view with people who were involved in those conversations. But when they asked a question, they really wanted to know what you thought. And there's a big difference between wanting to understand what you believe and why you believe it than trying to find the holes in your argument here and there. And that was all around the cigar. The cigar solved those problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm very willing to talk about, frankly, I avoid politics, almost all the time. But you want to talk religion or wherever, I'll do that. But I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to get into a fight. I'm not going to get into a finger pointing thing with you, because to me that's fruitless. And I know it may be hard to believe, but the best conversation I've had about those subjects have been at the cigar shop. the worst ones have been at church or at seminary.
I think what it is like when you're having a discussion with somebody, I think a lot of the time people speak more of like from the heart and like kind of the passion. And then what I've noticed, like when you're smoking a cigar, and this is why I mainly smoke cigars when I'm doing homework in law school, is like it opens your mind up, you know, because you're constantly thinking of something other
Because of
than
all the drugs in the cigar,
well, you're
mind just opens.
but you're thinking of something other than the substance of what you're doing. You know, like when I smoke a cigar, I'm not just thinking of the immediate task at hand. I'm
Right.
thinking of the nuances of the cigar, like maybe, you know, in my
Baking
case,
slice.
how it's
Is
made.
that distracting to your homework?
No, it like enhances it, you know, like it's actively
Yes,
in like kind of a
Roe versus
soothing,
Wade and baking
Citrus.
spice.
in like a soothing way. It really like opens your mind up, you know, like I'm doing homework or I'm having a discussion with somebody, you know, you smoke, and that's why like when I go on tangents with people, I mention like the spiritual aspects of a cigar. Like it opens your mind up and you're constantly relaxed, you're thinking of the nuances of the cigar, and it just kind of enlightens a conversation because you're not just thinking of like, you know, this burning passion of this point you're trying to make, but you're more opened up to like the room and what's going on and like other people, and it just
Yep.
seems like you just connect a lot more easily with somebody when you're smoking a cigar or having a nice bourbon with a cigar. That's my experience.
And the whole aromatherapy thing works. I mean, it does. The aroma and tastes of a cigar can put your mind into a really good place, and it can get you out of a really bad place. It's, you know, it's, and again, you know, I think, you know, one of the things you should do if you're trying to be, you know, a successful person is emulate what successful people do. One of the most successful people in all of history is Winston Churchill. You know, World War I, World War II, you know, getting kicked out of Parliament and all that, and everything that he did, all the ups and downs. What kept his mind focused so that he could go through having the ever-living crap bombed out of his country for 5 years? Cigars. Maybe we should actually think a little bit more about how that could actually help you deal with stress or difficult people, like Hitler. You know?
Very true.
Actually, I believe Hitler smoked cigars too. I've read that.
He probably did.
I mean, that still speaks to the point. I mean,
does.
obviously Hitler is a egregiously bad person, you know, but he was also a leader of a superpower, and you know, he smoked cigars, and obviously he has stress with what he was doing, even though it was egregiously messed up. But I mean, he still had a lot of
Said
stress
like a
on his
lawyer
plate.
who's trying to see both sides of the argument.
No, I'm
Very
just
good.
like, you know, there's a correlation of, well, for one, successful
You're right.
people. Again, Hitler,
Yeah.
not the right kind of success, but he
He was
Right.
very influential. He's also in the top 10 list for most influential people in the 20th century.
I mean, there is like this correlation of these people that have these really stressful, you know, experiences, you know, having cigars.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of current media doesn't necessarily shed light to those things because, again, like, you know, that's a whole nother topic why, you know, premium tobacco's lodged into cigarettes and the industry looks like crap because we're put in with whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, so the media doesn't necessarily talk about these things, but a lot of people, like more influential people than what most people would know, smoke cigars. You know, some people might be closet smoker, whatever it is, but it's very prevalent. Like you
Yeah.
see it a lot, you know, like what did I see? Oh, he's on literally every single talk show. I can't think of it. Oh my god. It's not Dr. Phil.
Oh, please, not Dr. Phil. Let's
No, it's
talk
not
about
Dr. Phil. It's oh my god, it's gonna infuriate me. He's
Oz.
on
Dr. Oz.
he has like the really nice mustache. Oh my god, who is it? He does
Oh, Geraldo Rivera.
no, oh my god, get me off. We'll move on, but
Yeah, someone else provided a Winston Churchill quote.
Yes.
Smoking cigars is like falling in love. First, you are attracted by its shape, you stay for its flavor, and you must always remember never, never to let the flame go out.
who's the host of Jeopardy right now?
Alex. Well, oh,
No. Yeah.
used to be Alex Trebek.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about though?
No, I don't follow Jeopardy.
Oh, it's gonna infuriate me. Hold on, this is why we have Google.
Yes, you should have done that 5 minutes ago. Na, 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 na,
I don't know internet. Hold on. Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey.
I didn't
You
get the
mean
name.
Family Feud guy.
Oh, Family Feud. That's what it was. Steve Harvey. He smokes a cigar in the trailer before every production thing he does, and I think it's Scott Pisciano actually had an article on him like a couple years ago, or a year or so ago.
I think I remember that actually.
Yeah, he smoked a cigar.
Yep.
He's a funny dude.
He is very funny.
He's
Yeah,
a
I
funny
like
dude.
it. Let me talk about another of these quotes. This is the last one, and I've saved my favorite for last. Speaking with the lady Astor, who was also not really impressed with his drinking, smoking, or his sarcastic quip. That's pretty stinking good.
Would you say Davidoff is one of the better brands to actually make an expression of Winston Churchill, or would you choose another brand to represent his name?
I think it would have to be a higher end brand like Davidoff. He was very into the finer things in life.
Like Placencia.
He was, another quote of his was, "My tastes are very simple, the best." And so I think Davidoff really fits that way. Obviously, his thing was Cuban. But I think this certainly pays good homage to him and the name. And, here I am now. I'm getting near the final third of the cigar. And to me, again, those flavors that we've all been talking about, the cedar, the wood, the cocoa, those brown pepper kind of spices, those were all kind of slowly building up, and the tastes, the body of the cigar, is slowly building as I smoke down it. And the longer I smoke it, the better I like it with the whiskey here. And being that this is a brand that Winston Churchill really liked, here's a cigar that goes really well with that whiskey. I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I can't see Winston Churchill picking up a street taco. I just don't think that would be him. He wants the finest and the best, and that's what Davidoff goes for. And Davidoff, I know they're not for everybody. They tend to focus on the more mild side of the spectrum for cigars. Not that they don't make stronger, full-bodied ones, but their portfolio focuses, on the lighter end of things. But that's frankly where the majority of smokers are at. And when you talk about consistently being able to produce a cigar that has, 14-year-old tobacco in it, year after year after year after year, that says something. And I think that kind of consistency that goes into this cigar, and the way that it's constructed, I haven't had to correct this or relight it. It's taken care of itself the whole way down.
Very true.
And it's just very enjoyable. Now, have you all had the Winston Churchill late hour before?
Yep.
You have? Have you, Dave?
I don't remember if I have.
Okay, so we're going to assume the answer is no. So you and I have both had the late hour. Having this and the late hour, what do you think? Obviously, it's kind of like you're comparing apples and oranges to a certain extent, but if you had your choice between this and the late hour, where would you go? Or are you going to give me one of your lawyer answers like it depends?
Well, it depends. Depends what I'm drinking. I mean, so the thing about what I've noticed, and this is why, I think the series is just phenomenal, is to me, the core line Winston Churchill is very balanced and assertive without being overbearing. So I think a lot of the flavors and nuances start off very tamed, and then by the back third of the cigar, they definitely start asserting themselves a lot more.
Right.
And I think that the late hour starts the first third with that assertion that the core line ends with, and then it goes into a more richer profile. Again, like that wrapper's aged in they say what bourbon it is, but I forget. But
It's a whiskey
aged,
barrel.
It's aged in a whiskey barrel. And interesting thing is that Winston Churchill 2022 limited edition that I got the box of, that cigar, it's a perfecto, but it took the blends from both and put them in the same cigar.
Really?
So you really get to kind of taste the tobaccos and see how they kind of mingle together.
That's really
So,
cool.
It is
Do you have
tough
any
to.
more of those?
I have almost a full box of them, yeah.
Maybe you could share one with your
Oh, it sounds
favorite
like the next
Pastor
episode.
Padron.
Yeah, there we go.
So, but so it's interesting to see how the tobaccos kind of play together.
It is
you know?
Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
It was my birthday Saturday, you know.
So it's tough. To, so it's tough to kind of choose which one I'd like. I think I'm more of a fuller-bodied cigar smoker, so I think the late hour definitely would take the cake in most scenarios. But like the thing about the core line is like when you say mild medium, like I still put it at like I'm kind of a medium and a quarter. Like it's not to me a mild cigar, and I think like.
Right.
I guess I'll use this to go on another book because we don't really have Davidoffs too often on the show, and I just kind of like my frustrations working here is one of the things of Davidoff
Which
that
frustration
is
are you
hard to
going to share
combat
now?
is like I think Davidoff as a brand is very much an exclusion type brand. Like I think Davidoff definitely it might not be the intention, but the way that they market their product is kind of excluding certain consumers. Again, like the price point,
Yeah.
it's in its own humidor. You know, it has its own aromas and everything that it has in the humidor. That's why they want it in there. Again, like that kind of lime and honey sweetness is what I kind of get out of it. So I think a lot of consumers that are like your traditional cigar smokers, where they, you know, they like their Nicaraguan, whatever it is. But I think it's kind of tough to get somebody to try a Davidoff because it's, you know, most people are like, oh, a Davidoff. You know, like it's a really ritzy kind of thing. And, you know, and that's kind of the marketing they kind of put forth to me. But the thing about Davidoff that I appreciate a lot about, not only is the transparency in the blend, so you know what it is you're smoking, what you're paying for, but again, like a lot of their blends they're assertive, but they're not overbearing. Like the flavors get more robust, but they never get to that point where you'd say, oh, it's a full-bodied cigar. Oh, it's really aggressive in this sense, you know. And again, a lot of smokers, especially in America, they like that assertion. They like the flavors to be prevalent and obvious almost.
Right.
But with like a Davidoff, you have to sit and you really have to think about it. You know, again, that's why to me Davidoff is the brand that I would choose to replicate, like do an expression of Winston Churchill, because again, like you have to sit and think.
Yeah.
Like if you just
what you love to do.
if you're going out and walking a dog and you're smoking this cigar, you're not going to get everything out of it. You have to really sit down. You have to understand the tobacco that's in it. Then you just have to taste it. You know, like, and you have to think about it. You know, so that's why the long way to answer the question is like Davidoff would be who I would have do the cigar. But yeah, like that's like I wish more people would try Davidoff. I guess is where I'm at. Like, it's hard.
If you were going to introduce people to Davidoff, what Davidoff would you introduce them using?
The Royal. I'm just kidding. Not the Royal.
Yeah.
I would probably do the Coraline
You
Churchill.
get paid? Give me your paycheck.
I would do. I would do.
No, there's no change.
I would do the Coraline Winston Churchill for there's two reasons. One is I think a lot of people would probably say the Nicaraguan, but that's part of Davidoff's the global line. So they you know, like the Yamasa, the Nicaragua, like the Yamasa is like a really swampy terrier land in the Dominican. So it's a Dominican Yamasa Puro, where the Nicaragua is obviously Nicaraguan Puro. So that's more of like, it's Davidoff, but it's not truly like an expression of Davidoff. Like it's kind of like just, you know, side project they've done.
Yep.
So with the Coraline Churchill, like I would say this one because it has like, again, like one of those hybrid leaves in there that Davidoff is known for. And it has like their Dominican Olor Dominicana that they work with frequently in their Coraline blends, but it also has two Seco leaves of Nicaraguan, you know, Condega Nestali. So it has flavors that I think your traditional smoker that doesn't smoke Davidoff would be familiar with, but it also introduced those nuances that Davidoff has to offer with those unique tobaccos that they work with on a day-to-day basis. So
that you're not going to find outside of Davidoff.
yeah, so I would say the core line Winston Churchill is probably what I would go with. It's not the most strong out of the line, but it definitely is going to touch home to what a lot of people are used to on our market today, but also kind of, dip their toes into what Davidoff has to offer. And then like obviously the Grand Crow and then the Anniversary is one of the ones I would say like that's a true Davidoff. Like most, if not all, the tobacco in there is very unique to Davidoff. And then obviously the Royal is, you have to be a Davidoff guy to smoke that cigar. It's all Davidoff tobacco. Like it's like the Royal barrels, so yeah. So I would go. This is the cigar that I would tell people to go
I would
with.
agree. This would be, if I were going to introduce them to Davidoff, where do I start? Start here. Because anybody could smoke this. It's light enough that I think anybody who likes a lighter cigar, they're not gonna be overpowered by it. There's enough going on in the cigar that a more experienced smoker who, like myself, might tend towards stronger cigars can still appreciate the body of it, and the changes that happens through the cigar too as things intensify towards the end. I think is something else that shows off Davidoff's blending prowess.
And even like to top, like like the systematic blending that they do, like there is very few spirits or drinks I can think of that wouldn't pair with like this cigar or like many Davidoffs. Like if you go and you smoke a Padron, it's a phenomenal cigar. And I smoke Padron all the time, but like if you want to have a beer, for instance, like I'm sorry, Padron's probably not what I'm going to suggest you, but like this cigar here, like we touched on the notes, like those. Like this spirit brought out, like, on the taste, like brought the Dominican, the aroma was a Nicaraguan, like it didn't take away from the cigar and it like made it, it pronounced it. Again, like what you guys are considering more of a mild, I say medium, you guys say mild, like.
Well, no, I'd still call it medium, but on the lower end of the medium spectrum.
Yeah, so like a lower end medium, like, Johnny Walker Black, it's not really a barrel proof, it's not like a huge powerhouse spirit, but it's definitely not something light,
Right.
It didn't take away from what most people in the market would say is a light cigar.
Right.
Where when you have like a cigar like Padron that's kind of a heavier cigar, again, it's like Esteli Nicaragua, it's going to take away from those kind of more mild spirits. But like a Davidoff, to me, you can have a mild spirit with it. You can have like an IPA, you can have an ale, you can have a barrel proof, and you're not going to take away from the cigar because it has so many characteristics to it based on those leaves that they use in the filler, that it's some tobacco in the cigar is going to pop based on whatever it is. If we had a barrel proof bourbon tonight, I would probably tell you that those Nicaraguan fillers would probably jump out in the cigar.
Right.
Well, this one was kind of a medium type spirit, so like both of the regions of tobaccos are popping out, different characteristics. So like that's why like I wish more people would smoke Davidoff. Like I wish they would at least try it.
Yeah. I mean, for I can totally understand for most people, paying between $25 and $30 for a cigar, that's not something you could do every day. But to, I mean, like even at Hooksett, you've got this whole thing of Placencia Friday. Everyone comes in and buys a $20 cigar. Once a week, once a month, or twice a month, treat yourself to something like this, and it's cheaper than going out. Let me tell you.
I think one of my favorite examples in the humidor downstairs, where I had somebody that was strictly anti-Davidoff, was they were a Padron guy. So again, when you have a Padron guy and you suggest anything that's not on the Padron wall, they're like insulted by you, right? Like, and so
Davidoff people are the same way.
So I mean, it goes for both ways. Again, like here at Twins, I think we're more of a Padron shop than a Davidoff shop. But I mean, not to say that a lot of people smoke Davidoffs. I mean, they do sell quite frequently. But Padron here, it moves more volume than Davidoff does. So I had a gentleman that wanted a suggestion, but he wanted a Padron. So I'm like, why do you need me? You know what I mean? But
yeah.
So he wanted a mild cigar, and I'm like thinking to myself, Padron mild. So I said, I mean, if you want like a higher end cigar that's more mild, but you get like these flavors, like why don't you get a Davidoff? He's like, Davidoff. Well, if I would just burn a 20 right now if I wanted a Davidoff. I'm like, all right. So then we had the Damasos in stock. So I was like, well, this is a Connecticut wrapped Padron, so it's gonna be a little bit more mild. I'm like, it's not gonna be really mild, but it still has like those Esteli fillers, but it's
Right.
gonna be more mild.
Right.
He was like, oh, okay. So we smoked it, came downstairs. Oh, it's phenomenal. I loved it. And then I told him the story of that cigar, and I'm like, do you know why that cigar exists? And he's like, oh. I'm like, well, Davidoff made the Nicaragua box. No, so vice versa. So Padron made the Damasos with the Ecuadorian wrapper, and they kind of did that to kind of shed like into the Davidoff market. So then Davidoff, in response, made the Nicaragua box press to kind of take away from the Padron market. So that cigar out of the Padron line was
Meant to compete with that.
meant to compete with Davidoff. So after I told him that, he then, because he liked it so much, he then went to Davidoff and he tried. He got a late hour because at the time we didn't have the core line Churchill. That's what I would have suggested.
Right.
He tried the late hour, and then he came back a couple weeks later, tried the Nicaragua, and then the guy to this day comes in frequently and gets a Davidoff, and it's just funny how someone that was so anti-Davidoff and so pro-Padron completely just left the Padron shop, which is like the only time I've ever had working here that someone left Padron
Getting
for another
Padron
cigar.
people who are like hardcore. I'm past a Padron. I love Padrons, but I go all over the place. But people who are solidly, that's what they smoke, Padron. It can be a 3000, it can be an Exclusivo, it can be a number 48, it can be a family reserve. But that's what they do. That's what they do. It's so hard to get them to try anything else.
Oh, asshole.
That happened.
The spirit of debris is with us.
Rod wonders what Churchill would be smoking now if he was the prime minister. Would it be a Davidoff or maybe even a Byron?
I think he'd still be smoking Cubans. It's me, but
Probably, being that he'd be in England. I don't know. Maybe he'd branch out.
I don't think he'd be smoking today's La Roma de
Atabay.
Cubas.
No, not today's. Not the Dominican or Nicaraguan or
Nicaraguan.
Ashton's La Aroma de Cuba. I think he'd kind of scoff at that. Although chewing, maybe it's all right for that. I don't know. What's the final verdict here on the Winston Churchill? Do you like this date? What did you think this was a good cigar?
I thought it was a good cigar. It was very well balanced, very nuanced. I don't know. I tend to like in your face flavors a lot more. I mean, I would smoke this as like a morning cigar. But
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
We know. I mean, you obviously think it's not only great, but a great example of Davidoff on the whole.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, echo everything I just, kind of went on a tangent about. Like, it's a really good cigar, and I think it's definitely something that someone should try if they want to spend, $20 on a cigar. But, and again, if you like, especially like the back third of the cigar gets, to me, like a medium plus. And if you like that, then that's when I would suggest trying the late hour, because it starts off where this one ends.
Right. Right. This still remains one of my favorite Davidoff cigars. I like the late hour too. This has so much more nuance to it than the late hour does.
Every third it's a different cigar every third.
It's great, and if you haven't tried one of these, I totally recommend it. And again, it can go with a lot of different spirits. I was thinking, especially as we were discussing the different kind of flavor profiles, this would go great with a tequila too, because of those limey kind of flavors that you get in there too. And there's so many different ways that you could pair the cigar and be totally happy. And not every cigar is able to do that and pair with a range of different, not only different, spirits, but different classes of spirits. Beer, you could have a rum with this. You could have a scotch with this. Bourbon, whiskey, there's a whole range of things. Obviously, some things would overpower this, but you got a lot of choices of where to go. So I love the versatility of the cigar too. Next week on the show, we are going to do our quarterly review.
Dun,
The
dun,
fourth
dun.
quarter review for the end of the year. We're going to be looking at cigars that have come out the last quarter of 2022, and we're going to be. My plan is to smoke
The Alfonso.
no, the Edge 20th.
We're getting those in?
I'm told that they have been shipped and that we will
what?
buy
The new Edge.
the new Edge from Rocky Patel. Now, if the DBS gets here before the show, I'm gonna do that.
What about the M81?
We're gonna do that, I think, a little bit later, but we can certainly talk about that cigar because it's a fourth quarter.
You know,
Which is the M81? I don't know why.
that's the
Oh, the
blackened-
blackened?
the blackened,
Oh, yeah. Okay, blackened's a good cigar. Well, we have something coming up for that one. We don't need to smoke that now.
Yeah.
We'll do the edge.
Teasing. I'm teasing.
Yeah, I know. We're teasing.
Yep.
Yep. Teasing what's coming up in the new year, Dave.
That you don't know about because you had hooks it?
Yeah.
No,
Heidi ho, I'm in Hokkaido.
I just sell all the placencias.
Yep, that's all I do. And drink Coke.
No Coke.
Mm.
Coke.
Anyway,
Mountain
so
Dew, maybe.
the new Edge 20th anniversary, that's what we're going to be doing next week. The DBS, if we get it, but I that's iffy. That's going to be shipping sometime in the next couple of days. It may or may not be here by the time next Tuesday rolls around. But the Edge will be here. I should have it before the end of the week. And so that's something we've been looking forward to for a while. We got a great relationship with the Rocky. So that'll be a great cigar, I think, to talk about.
Is Mike going to be here?
Fourth quarter. He could be. Who knows? I mean, that guy's everywhere, but
Here.
where he actually sells cigars. We haven't actually seen Mike in months, and so
He's been on the West Coast, I think.
yeah, he just got back from L.A. today,
Hmm.
and good
Rough
for
life.
you. I'm like, good for you. Yeah, well, he's out visiting his family, and he hadn't been able to get out there because of COVID for years, so he took everyone out. Well, I'm glad he went, but stop by the shop every once in a while, once a month or something. That would be nice, right? Yeah, we like Mike. But anyway, so that's what the plan is for the show next week. Make sure you're right here, Facebook, YouTube. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast, and we'll see you next Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. And that's not just blowing smoke.